Okay, good afternoon, you all. This is a continuation of our previous class. We started with OWASP Top 10 vulnerabilities. That one was treated last week. Now, this class is going to be like a continuation of what we did previously. So, in a bid to like remind ourselves what has been done, or all the things that have been done, I need someone to like just give me like a brief recap of the things we did last, or the vulnerabilities we treated last week. Anybody? Anybody? I'm waiting for more ends to come up. Okay, Mr. Chuka. Please, you can let your answer be brief because the class is being recorded.
All right. From what I remember, we had an overview on cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery. We also were introduced to some of the programs for penetration or vulnerability testing, such as Bob suites for interception, for man-in-the-middle attack, and yeah, that's the brief lowdown. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. For that recap. Now I will be sharing my screen so you can see where we are going to continue from today. So basically, we are going to continue with OWASP Top 10, but this time around I'll be dealing with insecure direct object reference, and also we'll be dealing with SQLI. I'm sure majority of us must have heard of SQLI, but then we're going to be talking about it properly today. So while I share my screen, good. So now we are dealing with insecure direct object reference. In other words, you can call it IDOR. Now, let me first explain it in the simplest way as possible, in a way that you would understand it properly. When you hear of insecure direct object reference, is basically when you have like a reference, they are referring to something, and you can easily change that reference directly. Okay, enough of the begging the question format. Take, for example, you have a website. This is like the simplest way. I just want to come from the simplest angle before I explain it in more technical terms. You have a website, www.facebook.com. So let's say we have www.facebook.com/user ID is equal to 1. I'm sure you know that user ID is referring to somebody, right? So if you change that object that is being referred to, user ID, let's say you change user ID equal to 2, what does it imply? It implies that if that can be done, it implies that the vulnerability has actually been exploited. That's if that can be done insecurely. Now let's move to like, let me explain it like more technical terms. Now, IDOR, like it's popularly known, it's popularly called IDOR, is a type of access control vulnerability that arises when an application uses user-supplied input to access objects directly. Now, if you notice, this IDOR is actually under this OWASP Top 10 because of what is a very, very popular vulnerability. I think it was listed, I think in the year 2007, that was where it got enlisted in OWASP Top 10. So now, if you know that you are going to test a website, you know that what you are basically dealing with, or there's a very high chance that you are going to deal with what OWASP Top 10. Now, it's just one of the many examples, just one of the examples of many access control implementation mistakes that can lead to access control. Good. So, IDOR vulnerabilities, they are most commonly associated with horizontal privilege escalation, but they can also arise in relation to vertical privilege escalation. So let's quickly ask around, what is the meaning of horizontal privilege escalation? What is the meaning of vertical privilege escalation? If you know the answer, you can just raise up your hand. Okay. Mr. Choka, coming.
Yeah, so horizontal privilege escalation is when you are actually like using someone else's account to do some certain things. But the person's privilege access isn't higher than yours, but you only want to be impersonating that person in order to perform certain tasks, such as a cashier in a bank using another cashier's account to do a certain task.
Sorry,
But the vertical...
please, if you can increase your volume.
Okay, sorry. So horizontal attack is horizontal privilege escalation is when you're using an example of a banker, let's say a bank cashier, using his own colleague's account to do some certain tasks so that you'll be masquerading yourself as your own colleague. But when it is a vertical escalation, is when you're using a privilege that is higher than your own, such as a cashier deciding to somebody trying to use the manager's own account to perform tasks that shouldn't be in his or her own privilege level. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that like brief and very apt explanation. Now, just like to buttress what he has said, he has actually said it all. But just note that in vertical privilege escalation, let's say you are the attacker, you basically take advantages of vulnerabilities for elevated privileges. Like he said, let me use this example. You are a cashier, you are using that of a manager. Meanwhile, for horizontal, the attacker exploits the privileges of someone that is of, like, let me say, peers at similar emission level. Like he said, a cashier using that of, let me say, another cashier. I like your example. That's like one of the reasons why I actually ask you the questions. So from your explanation, I'll be able to like explain better. Thank you very much. So there are many examples actually associated with IDOR. IDOR, anyhow you want to pronounce it. There are many examples of access control vulnerabilities where user control parameter values are used to access resources or functions directly. Now, let me give you one very good example. Okay, let me just look at what you have on the screen. Look at what you have on the screen. A direct object reference occurs when a developer exposes a reference to an internal implementation object, such as a file, directory, database record, or key, as a URL or form parameter. Now, attackers can manipulate those references to access other objects without authorization. Now, let's look at the example there, e.g., bank account.gsp, account number is equal to what? 123. Now, the moment you can easily change, this is like a very easy example. The moment you can easily change the 123, the 123 is identifying with a particular account number. The moment you can easily change that 123 to 4-5 to another one, what has happened? Simply, you've already like performed insecure direct object reference. I want to put it in a way that you are going to understand properly. That's very, very well. Let me just let me open a random site. Okay, I'll just write a random site. Now, let me share my screen so you see. Okay. Now, look at what you have on the screen. So, okay, good. You have this program on the screen. Now, imagine, just look at where I'm going to write the directory. Don't look at it's not the search, this thing. No. Let me go there. It's not this search box. No, where I'm going to write the directory. Now, imagine I write something like this. Imagine I write something like this. HTTPS colon. I mean, imagine you see something like that. So there is like let's use funny websites.com. Should we use funny? Let's use funnywebsite.com. Then there is a directory inside that funny website. We have like customer accounts. Let's say we have customer accounts. Then we have customer number. Then is equal to 1, 2, 3. The moment, I'm sure you know that when you run this program, let's say there's like an interceptor that's using your Bob, like we talked about before, using your Bob. If you intercept this, I'm sure you know you're going to see this thing. You're going to see this thing in your Bob. Now, the moment you, from your Bob, intercept this 1, 2, 3, let's assume this 1, 2, 3 is for Mr. Chuka's account number. Okay, let's even use a typical account number. Let me use my account. No, let me use just one strange account number, 2089 blah, blah, blah. So now let's assume Mr. Chuka. This is his account number. Let's use UBA. So we change this to UBA. Mobile banking. Now, the moment you can come like this and change this account number, you come and change this account number instead of this 2089 79 47 399. You now come, you now change this thing to 20 999 and you can run this thing. If you run this thing and it directly goes to another person's account number, let me say me, my account, it gives you details of my account. It does things like different kind of things. That's what they call IDOR vulnerability. That's like the simplest way of understanding what IDOR vulnerability is. Get. So if you can change this thing, basically, you can change it to another number, and you have access to that person's account. That's like IDOR vulnerability. So that's basically an example of IDOR vulnerability leading to horizontal privilege escalation, which we already explained. What horizontal privilege escalation is. Please, it's good to know that an attacker can always perform either horizontal or vertical privilege escalation by altering the user to one with additional. So let me change back the screen to our presentation slide. Okay. Okay, here we go. Now, it will not, the explanation will be complete. Explanation will be complete if we don't treat the practical example. But then before we treat the practical example, mind you, we're going to use Bob. Before we treat the practical example, let me give another format in which this IDOR vulnerability can be exploited. When there is a direct reference to static files, when I mean static files that are just there, IDOR vulnerability can always be exploited. Now, take for example, or we can say IDOR vulnerabilities, they often arise when sensitive files, it could be password list, it could be anything, it could be database record or anything. When they are located in static files on the server-side file system, for example, like a website might save the chat message or the transcript of chat. They might save it. So now you can actually exploit this vulnerability by incrementing the file name and allowing like users to retrieve the files. Let's say you know that the file, the transcript of chats are always stored with, let me see, like the example we're going to treat now, you see, let me see something.txt. You now change it to 1.txt. You know that, okay, let me say 1 is not what you're looking for. Then you change it to 2.txt, then change it to 3. You keep on changing it so you get that thing that you are looking for, right? So let's pick one very good. This one is a very practical example. So we are going to use our Bob. Use our Bob. So let me share my screen to this Bob. Okay. Brief recap of different, because majorly or from now on more about now our dashboard. These are the tabs. Now we have our targets, our sitemap here, scope here. We have our proxy, which we are going to be using more often. See this proxy, we're going to be using more often. Where we can intercept this thing. Where we can intercept traffic, or you may want to call it packet or whatever, for analysis, forward them, to drop them, to modify them, whatever it is you want to do. Let me quickly take it. We can ask one person, what is the meaning of, what does proxy mean? Question I'm putting forward to us. Who's going to answer that? What's the meaning of proxy? Anybody? What does proxy mean? Okay, let's Chairman now. You have not spoken today.
Okay.
Chairman now.
Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Okay, from your explanation of what a proxy is, a proxy is like a messenger, one that stands in for another to deliver a message, whereas the original sender of the message remains anonymous. So it's
okay, might not necessarily be anonymous. Okay, thank you very much for that. Lucy Shima. Okay, let me hear from you. I've not really heard you in class. Let me hear from you. What does proxy mean?
So proxy for me is just, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so proxy simply means using, it's simply, it's like one person using, is acting on behalf of another thing. That's the easiest way I understand proxy. It's one thing now using, you are standing in place of something else. So I said proxy means one thing standing in place of another. So it can mean a, like, one server, or yes, one server. You are using one server in place of another one.
Okay, but then the idea of something standing in place of something is not completely clear with me, or completely accepted by me.
Okay.
Can you put it in a better way?
I'm just saying it based on how I understand proxy.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna call you Mr. Chuka. Mr. Olayinka Samuel. What's your understanding of proxy? Mr. Olayinka Samuel. Lastly, Mr. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, good afternoon.
All right. So when I hear about proxy, the first thing that comes to my mind is a power of attorney. Is when someone has been authorized to act in behalf of someone else to carry out a project or a job. So that's what I understand proxy. Authorized to carry out a function.
Okay, thank you very much. That's now I want to connect the three answers. What Mr. Chairman has said, Mrs. Lucy, then Mr. Samuel, what the three of them said. Now, Mr. Chairman has said somebody's acting like a messenger. Mrs. Lucy said like a server acting in place of another server. Now, Mr. Samuel said like an authorized person. Yeah, both of them, the responses can be interrelated in a way that somebody is actually acting as an interceptor for packets or messages that are transferred to and from a client to the server, from the server back to the client. So not necessarily somebody that just taking the request from the client to the server. It could also be from the server to the client. So the person that is acting in between is what is the proxy. So now, like we know, our Bob suit as a proxy. Our Bob suit as a proxy. Now, you know what happens when the intercept is on? That means it's actually potent. It can actually do what the work it's gonna do. But then when it is off, it's as good as not even putting it on. It's as good as not even coming to this proxy. So let's go to our browser. Then we'll go to our browser. Then we'll check out this lab. Now, this lab is talking about can you see my browser? Sure. Oh, you can't see my. Let me share the screen again. Share the screen. Now, from this screen, from what you can see, this is a lab. We are going to, they will present to us a vulnerable website where we are going to practice IDOR. The website is actually vulnerable to IDOR, right? So, okay, what are they asking us to do? This lab stores user chat log directly on the server's file system and retrieves them using static URLs. Solve the lab by finding the password for the user Carlos and logging into their account. So basically, we are doing what? We are looking for the password for this guy Carlos. So let's access the lab. Access the lab. And while it loads, I don't know, it may take time to load. I don't know why the network is like that. Okay, it's still loading. Oh, it's taking forever to load. It's one of the reasons why I don't like using, sometimes I don't like using Kali. Like, I don't like it when something is very slow. It kind of pisses me off. So let's wait for it to load. It's taking so much of our time. So while it is loading, I can still tell you how you can easily spot simple IDORs. Although I doubt if you can see websites these days that easily you just spot it out. Okay, while this one is loading, let me quickly explain what is expected of us in this task. I'm going to use a browser that everything should load up very, very fast. The way you can easily spot IDOR, that some of them are actually some of them are easy to find. Yeah, the easiest IDOR vulnerability you would find is similar to what I explained before. Like you have a website, then there is a link, then you have like a direct reference to a particular object, just like I explained before. That's the easiest type you can always find. So to test for this kind of IDOR, just add or take a new one from the ID parameter and confirm you can have access to record that on a normal you cannot have access to. What I just explained now, can someone put me through? Can someone re-explain what I explained now? That's a very simple way of detecting IDOR. Let me switch this thing to, so that I'm going to know if the thing has loaded. It's taking forever. Oh, thank God it has loaded. So before that, I need someone to explain that what I just explained now, a very simple way to detect IDOR. Anybody? Anybody? Seems nobody. Oh, let me explain it again. But then I'm going to explain it again, and I need someone to still explain it to me. I need to be sure. Let me put off my Kali. I don't know why my laptop is not really responding to the way I want it to respond. Okay, I said the easiest way to detect IDOR, that's when you see a website, you can spot it. You can easily spot it. Is, let me use that what you are seeing, on the board. On the board. What you are seeing on the screen to explain. Now you have something like this. You now have, let's say there's a question mark here. You now have ID is equal to 1. The best way, let's say you just finished typing, you just finished entering a page, and you can see the URL like this. You can see the URL like this. The moment you increment this number equal to 2, you now press enter. How? As you press enter, it can take you to another person's, or something that you should not be able to access on a normal. You can access it. It means what? This thing is vulnerable to IDOR. That's the easiest way you can spot it. That's the easiest way you can spot it. Okay, now this is a chart. So let's go to this live chart. Remember the goal. The goal is that we should solve the lab by finding the password for this user, Carlos. Then we'll now log into their account. So once we always find this password, then we need to log into the person's account. So we come here, live charts, since it's taking forever to work. Okay, good. So we can just let's just chat. Let's just say hello. How are you doing? How are you doing? All right. We send it. We send. Let's see the response. It's like a live chat, something of that nature. So I'm not sure it understands what I'm saying. So the challenge says that what this lab stores user chat logs directly on the server's file system and retrieves them using static URLs. Solve the lab by finding the password. So our goal is to look for the password for this user, Carlos, right? Log into the account. So before we view the transcript, we want to download the transcript. Before we view the transcript, we are going to Let's put on our intercepts. I'm going to load up sorry, I will load up my Bob, then I will share, then you see my, please, if I just switch the screen, just know that it's just, please take it as normal. But I'll just like, I can always switch the screen at any point in time. So, Bob. Now, I will put on my intercept in Bob. I'll put on my intercept. This is it. Intercept is on. What does this mean? It means that what the proxy can now what capture messages that go to and fro. So intercept is on. Right? Intercept is on. Now I will go to the browser. I will go to the browser. Go to the browser. I would click on view transcript. View transcript. View transcript. So let me click on. I've clicked on it. View transcript. Now let's go back to our Bob and see what has happened. So going to Bob, let's see what has happened. We are going to forward this thing forward. We are going to forward this thing forward. Now you can see this message post. The post request. This is a summary of everything that went on there. Look at what we wrote now. Hello, how are you doing? Hello, how are you doing? Now look at the response it gave us, right? Download transcript. Let's forward. Should we forward this? Let's forward this. Now see, this is another request. This is a get request. This is a get request. Now this is actually the request that we are looking for. Now the moment you get something like this, get download transcript 2.txt. 2.txt. This is like a static URL. Now this 2.txt is trying to tell the server that hello, I want you to be able to download the txt file. But the name of that txt file is going to be 2.txt, right? Now, our responsibility here, I've already explained everything that is being done here. Our responsibility here is to exploit the IDOR vulnerability. How are we going to do that? Remember, I said if you can just increment the number or even decrease the number, either ways you are fine. So, but this time around, I'm going to like decrease the number. So 2.txt will change it to like 1.txt. Remember, I said we can increase the number, we can decrease the number irrespective. Anyhow we want to go. Let's say it's starting from 1, we can actually increase to 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, and check if it can run another thing that we don't have permission to run on the normal. It means what? It's vulnerable to what? IDOR. So now I just decrease the number by 1. So we are going to forward this request and see what's going to bring forward. So we forward it. Oops. Still showing me 2.txt. Change it to 1. 1. Then we forward this forward. Now we go to the website. We go to the web, the web browser, to say. It's actually meant to download something for us. Have you seen? It has downloaded the file. So let's open the file. Can you see this? The content of the file is there's a notepad. Okay, I'm not sure you can see it. Let me open. I'll share my screen. It downloaded the file. Downloaded the file, right? The file's name is 1.txt. Now I open that 1.txt. Now let's check out the context. The context. Say context. Content. Sorry, amazing. Content. Let's check out the content of 1.txt. That's the file that was downloaded. He said, now chatting with helpline. think I've forgotten my password. I mean, blah 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 blah. Fine, sure, no problem. You seem like blah blah blah. We don't need all this information. What we need is what? Okay, so you can see the transcript of the chat. So what this is the password. Have you seen? All you need to do is just seal the password, take the password away, then supply it. Now, all these things, all these things, the essence of all these things is to simulate real life experience. Is to simulate real life experience. Now, just like storytelling, attacks come in different versions, different patterns, different ways. There's not one straight road or one single road for attacks. No, you're actually meant to use like different ways to exploit the system, right? So this is just like a pattern in which attack can actually follow. So what do? We come here and we copy the password. So I'm going to copy this right now. I'll copy it. Control C. I'll go back to the site. I'll go back to sites. Now we're gonna my account. Let's go to my account. So we go to my account. We want to supply the password there. Oh, sorry, the intercept is on. We need to put off intercept. Sorry. We need to put off intercept. You know now, with the intercept being on, our request will not be able to go to and for the way we want it. So let's put off intercept is off now. So good. So it's meant to go in. So what's the username of this guy? He said the username is what? Carlos, C-A-R-L-O-S. Then the password is that one that we copied, Control V. Then we can log in.
Good evening, sir. Okay, sir, I wanted to say that we are no longer seeing your screen when you wanted to lock in the password. Thank you, sir.
Sorry about that. I didn't know this thing was muted all along. Okay, please. I need someone to remind me. Where did you stop? Where did I stop? Okay, Ahmed.
Okay, you stopped when you wanted to the password.
You copied the password, so and the username is Carlos. So the moment you copy the password so that you can input the password so that you can log into that account, that is when they could not hear you and the screen is not showing anymore. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll continue from there. Let me share the screen. We'll go back there. I just input the password.
Sorry, I'm not hearing, and I just come in.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so let me go back. So it doesn't look like. So go back. So it actually showed that we've solved the lab, right? Because the bottom line is to what? Is to input the name of the person, and the password. So that's what I did basically. I input the person's name. That's Carlos. Is his username. They already told us that Carlos is his username. Then what? We supplied the password. So we come here, my account. Then, oh, sorry. So it's already logged in. So unless I log out, let's log out. My account. So the username is Carlos. For the password, that thing that we copied, then we log in. So that's basically the idea. So this already solves the lab. Yeah. So without wasting much of our time, we are going to move straight into the next very key vulnerability. This one is actually very, very important. It's called SQLI. And SQLI is or you can just say SQLI, or you can use SQL injection. Yeah. Can someone tell me the meaning of SQL? Let's start from that. Someone please tell me the meaning of SQL. If you know the answer, you raise up your hand. Okay, Emeka.
Structured query language.
Thank you very much. Structured query language. Now, please, some of you have been raising up your hand for quite a while now. If you please, so that I will know that you're actually responding to the question, you can put down your hand so that the moment I ask a question, you just respond to it. Right? So let's go to SQL. And SQL is actually very popular. Popular in the sense that you tend to see it. It tends to occur. I'm not going to say like one is more popular than the other, but just SQL is actually very, very popular. Even I'm sure you must have heard of it, SQLI. Now, let's proceed to the slide. So like this is a graphical representation of that of IDOR that I explained before. You can see user ID found and request is seen as valid by the server. So that's when this hacker here, changes the ID to something else. So let's proceed. SQLI. SQL injection is a security vulnerability that occurs in the database layer of an application. Its source is in the incorrect escaping of dynamically generated string literals embedded in what? In SQL statement. Now, more about SQLI. Like I started for IDOR, I used the basic explanation for it. Now, let me start with a basic one before I move to a more technical aspect to explain SQLI. Basically, just know that if you see a particular website and is asking for user inputs, it's asking you for something like that stuff we tried to solve earlier on, that asked us for inputs. I'm referring to the challenge we solved on Cyber Talent, the Escalate challenge. Now, if there is a prompt, it's asking us for inputs, and it does not sanitize that input that we are dropping. It is actually vulnerable to SQLI. Now, a popular way of injecting queries like that, just like you're communicating with your database, you're communicating with the database. Now, you tell the database to do something as opposed to what you're actually meant to do, or you give database something that is generally true, like 1 + 1 or 1 = 1, generally true. You give database something like that, it's going to read it in a more simpler term. I'm trying as much as possible to explain it the way I understand. Now, let's say there's a website now. The username is John Bull. Password is 12345. Right? Now, the idea is that thing is going to write, let's say it's going to instruct the server that if somebody comes in and puts the username John Bull, then put the password 12345, allow the person to enter. You now say, okay, username is what? John Bull. Password, you don't know the password. You now wrote password is if 1 is equal to 1. I'm sure you know that if 1 is equal to 1 is true. That statement is true. 1 is always equal to 1. The moment you put something like that, I'm just trying to explain it in the simplest way I can. Now, the moment you put something like that, that 1 is equal to 1 in that password field, it's going to see it as true. Thereby, or let me say consequently, it's going to accept that request. That's username John Bull, then password, something like that. I don't know if you understand. So basically, if you use SQL scripts to inject, use SQL injection, you just need to access what data. Now let's move to a more technical explanation of SQLI. So SQLI is like a web security vulnerability. It allows like an attacker to interface with query. Mr. Chuka, you raised up your hand. Also, Mr. Jubri,
I don't really understand the explanation very well, because if I'm trying to understand how entering a code in the password field can make the database accept it. I don't really understand.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Now, the way the thing is, your hand is still raised up, Mr. Chuka. You have more questions as regards that?
Sir, no, sir.
Okay. In this slide, there's a place I give like one very let me see, like a basic explanation for it, or like a graphic explanation for it. After I finish explaining, I will explain the basic one again, like the one that is like, let me say, very easy to understand. Then after that, I'm going to explain it in more technical terms. Okay, before I explain it, let me hear if Ms. Joyce Umo, you have a question as regards that. Yeah, do you have a question? Ms. Joyce Umo. Okay, there is no question. Now, to an ordinary user, when you have a website and the website is asking you for username and the website is asking you for password, that's the username field, and that's the password field. Basically, to an ordinary user, what do? You just input your username, then you input your password. You don't know what goes on behind the screen, right? Give me 1 minute. Okay, like I was saying, you don't know what goes on behind the screen. That's just for an ordinary user. Now, let me try to explain the mechanism or what happens like in the background. Let's move to the next. Before we move to the next page, you input your name, your username as. Let me use Chuka as example. Your username is Chuka. Your password is let's say Chuka123. The idea is that the server will see that if the username comes in as Chuka and the password comes in as Chuka123, we are going to permit this entry. We are going to permit this person that is inputting these two things to enter. But the moment you put another thing, let me say you can put sugar, you now put for the password section, you now put sugar 245. It's not going to enter. Just like take it, I understand this with the idea of computer programs. If this is this and this is this, allow it to go. But don't allow it to go if it brings another thing. Let's say it brings Chuka as username, it brings Boniface as password. Don't allow it to enter. Do not enter. Now, someone that knows that this website is vulnerable to SQLI, the person now comes under username, the person puts Chuka under password. The password will not just like appear there as password. The person writes the SQL query. That the person writes the SQL query. Like there's actually like an understanding of SQL. Some people go as far as learning SQL on its own, but then you might not really. You might not really. There are actually queries you can actually copy, then input in fields like that. So the moment you put in, I just use a typical example of 1 is equal to 1. At all cases, 1 is always equal to 1. So if it sees that thing as true, that thing that you're putting inside that input with that password input field, it has already collected your first one, that Chuka is the username. That's seen that one as true. Then password, that's seen that 1 is equal to 1 as true. It's going to accept that, or it's going to give like a go or give like a green light. That's actually the explanation in like, I don't know, the way I'm even putting it now, it's not beginning to seem it's now in a technical way. But then SQLI it can allow an attacker to view data that normally under normal circumstances they're not supposed to view. That if it uses the right query, it's going to basically allow an attacker to do that. Now, the funniest part is that this files or data that we're talking about might actually belong to other persons or other users that are logged into that site. It might also be that data. It might be data that other applications can access. Now, the potency of this vulnerability is that it can. Next slide. Yeah, it can actually modify stores, can delete stores. You can do as many things as possible. A successful SQL injection can view passwords. That's when you have access to the database in the server. You can actually view passwords. Now imagine you can view passwords. What it means is that if you have the right access to the right database, let's assume that database is saving credit card details. Take for example these betting companies that they save card details like your CVV number and the likes of them. It means with the right query, and if that website is vulnerable, you can actually view those credit card details. And imagine when you can view the details of someone's card. Then you can perform transactions with his card or with his account. So look at this simple or this sample SQLI attack. Now the login, there's a space for login here. Then there's a space for password here. This is like what I explained. The login, the username, then the password. Now, when you press your, let me input something here. Let me input the username here. Sure you can see my screen. So under login, let me use John Ojo as the username. John J-O-H-A Ojo. Under passwords, I would use John Ojo 256. Just normally, I'll use John Ojo 256. John Ojo 256. So the idea now is that what the query that will be sent to the server is what select from users. You know, it has a list of users. Let me show you my screen. Okay, good. You can see my screen. Now, the idea behind it is that the query that is going to be sent to the server is that what it is going to instruct the server to select from all users. You know, definitely there's a database now whereby users are stored. So select from all the users one person whereby the login is what username. Who is now the username? You come back here. It's going to check is what John Ojo and plus now and sorry and password is what this password here, this value here. We come here. What is the value of this password here? Say what John Ojo 256. That is ordinarily this is what is going to what is meant. This is what is meant to enter the this is a query that is meant to enter the server, right? So if this thing is correct or if it is true, it's going to permit you to what to enter. Now this is what this person is going to now do. The hacker logs in as or then this is like a query, this is like what is going to inject. So what it's now going to do is that select. You remember when we're dealing with command, we said asterisk is like white card. White card is like all. That's I'm talking of command now. Use that knowledge to bring it back to this SQL. So select from users, that's from all users, or from the database of users, where the login is equal to or equals, then we have this, and password is equal to this. I don't like this example, but still, I want to use one example that you are going to really flow with. Okay. Let's say for the password section, you have something like 1 is equal to 1. So now select from users, that's like all from users, where the login is this, then the password, you can say when the login is John Ojo, you can use John Ojo. Let's say you know the person's username, and the password is what 1 is equal to 1. The moment you do something like that, it's going to see it as true, then it's going to allow you to enter. Now, how do you know? How do you know that a particular website is vulnerable to SQLI? That's SQL injection. How do you know? One of the ways you can do it is maybe aside from running automatic tests, you can also run like manual tests. Like you're going to be checking one after the other. Go and check each entry point. When I mean entry point, I mean take for example, login page now where they will ask you for username and your password. That's like an entry point. Go to that entry point. Go and put something there. Take for example, you put like a single quote. That's like that quotation, that single quote now. Look for the errors it's going to bring out. Yeah. So some SQL specific syntax that evaluates to the base, that's like to the original value of the entry point. And also like the different value. Also look for systematic differences in the application responses, like the way the website is going to like respond to that. Let me use the word nonsense or that rubbish that you actually input inside that entry point. Yeah. So another one is you can use all this, like I mentioned earlier on, 1 is equal to 1, 1 is equal to 2. Then see the differences in the applications response. And remember what I said earlier on, you can always use what automated this thing, that's your Bob to scan it, or your Zap to scan it. Okay. Look at this simple example. Okay, you can always do like a joke or something like diagrammatic explanation of it. Hi, this is your son's school. We're having some trouble. Did you do something in a way? Did you really name your son Robert? Drop table student. Now this drop now is like a statement. like a statement. Like somebody was saying that, oh, it's looking like I'll go and learn programming language. And I would really say, it's not as if you're gonna like, it's not that you learn everything, but there's some basic things that you need to like at least know. One is, at least if you know Python, it's going to be good for you because we're doing one or two things that I'm talking about programming language, you'll be able to relate very well. Even if you know PHP, it's still not bad. Nobody's saying you should be like a master in it, but then if you see it, you can recognize it, you can identify it. Same with this SQL. Yes, like now I'm talking about statements. Now there are different statements that we have. Like this drop now, one. You can update is one, insert is one, select is one. And those are the few I can remember as talking about different statements that we have. So, did you name your son this? Oh yes, blah 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 blah. Well, we've lost this year's record. I hope you're happy. Definitely, what happened? This was nothing like, and I hope you've learned to sanitize your database inputs. That's like a way of preventing what SQLI, that's SQL injection attacks. There are different types of SQLI. There is blind SQLI injection, union-based attacks. Also, moving down here, you have like a demo, like it does if you want to like just like check like a demo listing, a demo, the demonstration of like how SQLI was done. How do you prevent it? Like I said, always like you can always like sanitize your inputs. This one is saying validates your inputs. Use prepared statements. Escape questionable characters. Moving further, we want to minimize the impact of SQLI. Now, it's not as if this is not your responsibility, because most times, like we are training you to become like cybersecurity professionals or something like that. Now, the idea is that you see all these things, you report to those that designed the application, the web application. They're actually meant to fix it by yourself. Like me, what I tell myself is my responsibility is to see all these things and exploit them, or not usually exploit them, report them, right? So we proceed. Now, injection impacts that are more than SQLI. Injection flaw. SQL injection is most prevalent. In other forms, we have all these. Moving further, we have that's authentication checks. Now this time around, we are actually moving away from those ones that require, let me say you are inputting strings or commands or prompt. If you observe very well, the three we've treated so far, not three, the ones we've treated so far, let me just mention a few: CSRF, XSS, SQLI. Now, one thing you can observe about the three of them is that there is actually a point we are going to input one query or input one command or input a string or input something, right? So now this one is not like, this one is like, is a bit different. So now, authentication checks. Using that website, if you check the PowerPoint, that website that was actually given there, if you check it, account credentials and session tokens are often not properly protected. Attackers can compromise passwords, key, authentication tokens to assume other users' identities. So it is ideal, never store passwords in plain text. I already mentioned that one before, that passwords are actually stored in what's hashed format. So encrypt them or use what hash and sort as you sort it. So architect applications to check every request to see the authentication data is still valid. Issue a new system token when a change in privilege occurs. Okay, so we are going to, as per OWASP Top 10, we are going to stop here. Now, while we stop here, I'm going to quickly show you. Trying to stop the record. We are going to stop here. While we stop here, I will introduce you to TryHackMe platform. Let me stop here.